Today's lesson is Daisy, the AI granny, turns the table on scammers. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And we're not scammers here. We're not trying to get money from you or something like that. But, of course, some of you may have encountered scammers before. They call you on the phone and they say, oh, there's something wrong with your bank account. We need your number or something like that. Or we have your son or your daughter here. You better give us some money or we'll kill them or something like that.
Gosh.
These are scammers, of course. And, of course, we always want to figure out ways to turn the tables on them to kind of give them a taste of their own medicine.
Absolutely. You might have gotten those phone calls or maybe an email that looks like it's from a legitimate company and it's asking you for a certain amount of money. Maybe there's an email from your bank and they say, oh, there's a problem with your account. Just send us your password and PIN number and we'll sort it out. Or I'm a businessman or I'm a prince from some country and I just need a bit of money. So if you transfer $10,000, I'll send you $1 million a day later. And of course, once you send your money, you never see it again and you never hear from those people again. You have been scammed or you have been conned. That's another word we might use, C-O-N, con. The past tense would be C-O-N-N-E-D, and it's no fun, and often there's not much the police can do to help you out. So this is something that a lot of us would not want to be victims of, a scam or a con. But apparently there's an AI granny out there, and she is fighting the good fight as she turns the tables on the scammers. The scammers are now the scammed because of the AI granny. Let's find out all about this gray-haired avenger. Daisy, the AI granny, turns the tables on scammers. A British phone company has created an AI chatbot designed to combat phone scammers. Released by Virgin Media O2, Daisy acts and talks like a friendly older woman while on the phone with scammers. Her objective is simply to waste their time with her lack of tech literacy and long-winded stories about her grandchildren.
大家好，第一部分介绍名词 objective， 它的意思是目标或是目的。例如 The objective of this project is to increase brand awareness in several untapped regions. 这个专案的目标是在几个未开发地区增加品牌知名度。或者 What are Mike's objectives for going to law school? Mike 进法学院的目的是什么？
Okay, so let's introduce this topic to you in the first paragraph. It says, a British phone company has created an AI chatbot designed to combat phone scammers. So this, of course, is happening in the UK. It's a phone company in England or Scotland or whatever. It says British, so it has to do with the UK here. And a chatbot, of course, is a robot that can chat with you. It's not really a physical robot. It's a computer program, but I think we've all played with these before. You say something to the computer, and then it responds as if it's a real person.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of customer service for companies might be handled by a chatbot. If you have simple problems or questions, you're talking to someone through text, but it's actually not a person. It's an AI chatbot program. So this is something that can basically operate on its own. We don't need people to be doing this as these AI chatbots fight back against the scammers. It says released by Virgin Media O2, Daisy, that's the name they've given their AI chatbot, a lovely name for a lovely old lady. Daisy acts and talks like a friendly older woman while on the phone with scammers. So she kind of appears to be just one of those confused people who says, oh, I sent $500 yesterday and now it's gone and I don't know what's happening. And so she's chatting with the scammers. Her objective is simply to waste their time with her lack of tech literacy and long-winded stories about her grandchildren. So she's probably not going to get your money back for you in a specific case, but she might just stop the scammers from doing this because she is wasting their time. That is her objective. Your objective is your goal, the thing that you're trying to do. And of course, the result that you want to achieve is your objective. So that's what they're trying to do. Waste their time, waste the time of the scammers. And Daisy does this with her lack of tech literacy and long-winded stories. So she sort of appears to be your typical grandma who's not so good on computers and loves to talk about her grandchildren for hours and hours and hours. she has a lack of tech literacy, tech meaning technology. Literacy is a word we often just use for people who can read and write. If you are literate, you can read and write. If you have poor literacy, reading anything above a very basic level would be difficult, but we can also use it to talk about knowing about certain things. We could say her tech knowledge, her computer knowledge, just the sort of ease with which she uses computers is very, very low. So they would say, oh, what's a PIN number, dear? I don't know what that is. I use pins for sewing, or something like that. So they'd have to explain how to move the mouse, how to log on to things. So she would waste their time doing that. And then she would have these long-winded stories about her grandchildren. And some of those long-winded, they just talk a lot and not about anything really interesting or useful, important. They just go on and on and on. They use a lot of wind when they're telling their stories.
Yeah, long-winded, I guess, would be a good translation for 啰嗦, as you say in Chinese. And yes, indeed, these scammers usually prey on elderly people because they don't really have this tech literacy. They're easily fooled. So if you have grandparents, everybody, let those grandparents know that they need to watch out for those scammers because they'll take advantage of them. They will prey on them. But yeah, if you're long-winded, you just go on and on about various things. And this does remind me of an actual website online called Scammer Payback. Maybe you've heard of that before. It's an actual real guy who disguises his voice as an old lady, okay? So he talks to these scammers for hours on end, and they finally get mad and they start swearing at him, so it's kind of fun. But hopefully he's protecting people from getting scammed, and that's what this AI robot is trying to do, or this chatbot, as I should say. Okay, we're at the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on to the second part.
This novel approach arrives as phone scams targeting vulnerable individuals have seen an increase in recent years. Daisy turns the tables by engaging scammers in long conversations, which keeps them from targeting real victims. Unlike traditional scam prevention systems, Daisy is powered by advanced AI. After translating the scammer's voice to text, the AI searches its database to produce a suitable response from Daisy within seconds. For example, a conversation might have Daisy appear to act confused about payment details. Such responses annoy the scammer and keep them occupied.
第二部分看到形容词 vulnerable， 表示脆弱的、易受伤害的，也可以是易受影响的。例如 The young trees are vulnerable to frost damage during the early spring. 年轻的树木在初春时易受冻害。或是 Carly is vulnerable to infection because of her poor immune system. Carly 因为免疫系统不好，容易受到感染。接着看到名词 prevention， 它的意思是预防、妨碍或是阻止。例如 Regular exercise is important for the prevention of heart disease. 规律运动对于预防心脏疾病是很重要的。也可以说 Firemen came to our school to give a talk on fire prevention. 消防员来到我们学校做防火解说。继续介绍动词 translate， 表示使转化为、使转变为或是翻译。可以说 The product's popularity translated into big profits. 该产品的人气转化为丰厚获利。又或者说The book has been translated into 27 languages. 这本书已被翻译成27种语言。再来看到动词 occupy， 意思是占空间、时间，同时也可以是占领或是占据的意思。例如 The art gallery occupies the site of a former factory. 这间艺廊使用了一间旧工厂的空间。再看一个例子 Matt's music equipment is occupying way too much space in the garage. Matt 的音乐器材在车库内占据太多空间了。
All right, let's get into our AI chatbot Granny as she fights the good fight against scammers. So already we know that AI Granny is actually named Daisy. She's from a British phone company, and she goes online. She, of course, is an AI chatbot program, but she wastes the time of scammers by just basically going on and not understanding what they're talking about, stopping the scammers from going on to scam other real people. It says this novel approach arrives as phone scams targeting vulnerable individuals have seen an increase in recent years. So there seems to be more of a need for people or programs like Daisy because phone scams are becoming more common, especially targeting or going after, focused on trying to make victims of vulnerable individuals. And if you're a vulnerable individual, if you're vulnerable, you're kind of weak in a certain area that might likely to be the victim of something. You're more likely to be hurt or damaged or injured by something. If you're fighting off some terrible illness, you might be more vulnerable to catching colds and flus because your body is worn down, or even traveling. A lot of people find that when they travel or come home, they might be vulnerable to illnesses that they can pick up in airplanes or hotels or traveling around and things like that. And when your body is tired and stressed, you can be weaker. It can be more likely that bad things can happen to you. A vulnerable individual for a phone scam would be, as Roger mentioned, and as we've learned, kind of older people who don't understand how these scams work. Maybe people who don't speak English so well. So recent refugees to countries can be quite vulnerable. And I think because of COVID, with a lot of people doing a lot of things online, shopping, banking, other things, just more online activity, especially with purchases and money, that can mean all of us are more vulnerable because we're just using our credit card on the internet more often than we used to. And of course, that is a very tempting target for scammers. So Daisy turns the tables by engaging scammers in long conversations. Remember, she's long-winded. She goes on and on about different things, and she doesn't understand computers well. Her tech literacy is very low. So this all results in long conversations, which keeps them, the scammers, from targeting real victims. She's basically tying up their time so that they can't go on to scam other people. They waste their time on her.
Exactly, and maybe those scammers will finally decide to seek employment in a different field.
Nice.
That would be actually quite nice.
Yeah.
Moving on now to the next paragraph here. It says, unlike traditional scam prevention systems, Daisy is powered by advanced AI. So there are different ways to prevent scams or to watch out for them, but they're traditional scam prevention systems. Okay, so of course prevention is all about stopping something, and there are different ways that scams can be prevented. Maybe they screen phone calls or something like that, or you have some sort of computer program in your computer that detects phone calls from certain questionable places in the world or something like that. But this particular method is different from those traditional prevention systems because it's powered by AI. AI, of course, is very common in our conversations nowadays.
Absolutely. Artificial intelligence is powering it. So, of course, it will be much more natural sounding to the scammers engaging with Daisy than some of the older, more simple programs. So, here's the big question. How does Daisy do it? After translating the scammer's voice to text, the AI searches its database to produce a suitable response from Daisy within seconds. Wow, so it's just a very fast learning program. So it's translating the scammer's voice to text. Of course, it's a computer, so it can't just listen to your words and understand it. It has to sort of turn it into data. In this case, it turns it into actual words. So this is like one of those programs you can use on your phone where you speak into your phone and it writes out the words that you said. There might be a few small mistakes, but generally it writes down those things. It's translating the voice to text. Well, this is an interesting way of using translating. Translating is often used when we think of languages from going from one language to another. All right, so if you're speaking in German and then your other friend speaks Spanish, you'll need someone to translate to change that German sentence or those ideas into a language that another person can understand, into a different language. Here we also maybe say transcribing the scammer's voice to text, because to transcribe is to write down what a person is saying. If you're in a court case or in a big meeting, there might be a secretary or someone there who can write or type quickly, and they're writing down the words that are being said by the people speaking. So it's kind of doing that, but of course translating is okay to use because we're turning it from human words into text data that an AI program can understand. And then Daisy, the AI, searches its database, searches its memory or mind, in other words, to produce a suitable response from Daisy very quickly, within seconds. So to the scammer, I guess this would seem like a normal conversation, maybe a long-distance conversation over the internet, but still, I'm talking to a real person, I say something, and they respond.
Well, I think scammers are not stupid. They'll figure it out eventually, but hopefully this will work for quite some time. But let's give you an example of this. For example, a conversation might have Daisy appear to act confused about payment details.
Daisy could be me.
Indeed. So they'd probably say, well, I'm not really sure what number should I use on my credit card. Is it the one on the back or the one on the front? Or should I read the numbers backwards? Or should I use an old credit card number or something like that? They'll act confused about this, and such responses annoy the scammer and keep them occupied. And of course, if you anger scammers, they can actually get quite violent. They can actually start cussing you out. So be careful there. Yes, you keep them occupied. You basically waste all their time.
Keep them very, very busy so they cannot scam other innocent people. All right, let's look at the final part of our article right after we hear it. Although this technology is a promising effort to combat fraud globally, individuals still need to remain vigilant to protect themselves from scammers. As Murray McKenzie, Director of Fraud at Virgin Media O2, put it, Daisy is also a reminder that no matter how persuasive someone on the other end of the phone may be, they aren't always who you think they are.
第三部分我们看到形容词 promising 指的是大有希望的、前途光明的。举例来说 Our football team is looking very promising this year. 我们的足球队今年很有希望。又或者说 With her new promotion, Jill's career seems promising. Jill 刚升迁，看起来前途光明。最后看到形容词 persuasive 表示具说服力的或是令人信服的。可以说 The speaker delivered a persuasive speech. 该讲者发表了一场有说服力的演说。最后一个例子 The lawyer made a persuasive argument. 该律师提出了一个有说服力的论点。
Okay, here's the final part of our article for today. It says, although this technology is a promising effort to combat fraud globally, individuals still need to remain vigilant to protect themselves from scammers. So yes, indeed, this is a very promising technology. It has some hope for the future. It might fight scammers and eventually stop them from ever bothering us again. We want to combat them globally. Of course, lots of scammers are based in other countries around the world. And yes, we can depend on this technology to a certain extent, but we can't be stupid. We need to remain vigilant to protect ourselves. If you're vigilant, that means you are aware that something bad might be happening. So if somebody calls you on the phone and they want you to give them some information about your bank account or your credit card, you need to be aware of these things. Don't expect some kind of chatbot to take care of the situation for you.
Absolutely. Always be vigilant. Always be alert to possible danger. Here's an expert, Murray McKenzie. As Murray McKenzie, Director of Fraud at Virgin Media O2, put it, Daisy is also a reminder that no matter how persuasive someone on the other end of the phone may be, they aren't always who they think they are. Yes, scammers and fraudsters, con men, these are terms that we use for criminals who trick people out of their money. One thing they have to be is persuasive. They have to kind of make you believe them and make you follow what they're saying and do what they're telling you to do. A politician who's persuasive might convince people who don't necessarily like that politician, but might use words and ideas and arguments and different ways of expressing what they want to get people to vote for them. If you're a lawyer, you might have to be quite persuasive to get the jury to believe your case or your side of the story. Or maybe if you're a young kid and you want to stay up late, you might have to be persuasive. Oh, I'll do extra homework tomorrow or something like that. If you just let me stay up late and watch this movie, if you can get people to do what you want to do by using words, not by using threats, but by using words, you're quite persuasive. So no matter how persuasive, no matter how, meaning it doesn't matter how, they can be very, very persuasive or not very persuasive. It doesn't really matter. It's not really a factor. factor here, but basically know that whoever is on the other end of the phone or on the other end of that internet connection, they aren't always who they think they are. They could be a scammer, or it could be Daisy and you're the scammer.
Hopefully you can avoid those scams in the future and that you don't become victims yourself. So that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny, who would never scam us.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分提到，人工智慧聊天机器人 Daisy 借由与诈骗者展开长时间通话来翻转局势，从而防止他们对真正的受害者下手。好，文中他用到 keeps them from targeting 什么什么来表达防止他们对什么什么下手。好，那当我们用这个 keep 或是 prevent或是 stop 加受词加 from 再加动词 ing， 这样的句型可以表达阻止某人做某事，使某人无法做某事，或是防止某事物怎么样怎么样。例如 The storm kept them from traveling to the area， 暴风雨使他们无法前往那个地区。那再看一个例句是 The government has taken measures to stop the disease from spreading， 政府已采取措施阻止那个疾病扩散。好，那补充一下哦， keep 还可以用 keep 受词 from 再加名词去表达，像如果说 keep people from danger 就是表达防止人们遭遇危险。好，除了 prevent、keep 和 stop 这几个动词之外， protect 也可以搭配 from， 像我们课文第三部分第一句它就用到 protect themselves from scammers， 用来表达说保护自己不被诈骗。那当我们用 protect 受词 from 加上名词或动名词，这可以表达保护什么什么免于怎么样，保护什么什么不受什么的伤害。举例来说 She wore sunglasses to protect her eyes from the sun，他戴墨镜来保护眼睛不受阳光伤害。那接着呢，我们看到课文第二部分的最后一句，这样的回应会让诈骗者感到恼火，并让他们忙到不可开交。文中他用到 keep them occupied 来表达让他们忙得不可开交。那他用到的结构是 keep 加受词加受词补语，去表达使什么保持怎么样怎么样。keep 在这边是指使保持某状态的意思。那受词补语我们可以用到形容词、现在分词 VING、过去分词 PP 或者是介系词片语。这边造几个例句。第一个例句是 Doing crossword puzzles can help keep your mind sharp。 玩填字游戏可以帮助你让头脑保持灵光。这时候受词补语我们用到了形容词 sharp。Please keep the door locked。请让那扇门保持上锁的状态。那这边受词补语就是用过去分词 locked。那另外一个例句是 Keep your eyes on the road while driving。 开车时要留意路况。那这时候我们用到介系词片语 on the road 来当受词补语。好，那以上今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Objective. Our main objective now is to finish the report by Thursday. Vulnerable. Neil avoids sharing his feelings because he doesn't want to seem vulnerable. Prevention. Regular exercise and a healthy diet are key to the prevention of heart disease. Translate. This game controller translates hand gestures into actions on the screen. Occupy. The adults chatted while the children were occupied with their game. Promising. The coach saw great potential in the promising young player. Persuasive. Tyler's speech was so persuasive that the audience immediately supported his idea.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter. The question is, what is something that you do to protect yourself from scammers?
Well, I've noticed with phone scammers in Taiwan, they don't like talking to foreigners on the phone. We might understand, or maybe we won't believe them. So one way I avoid scams is by answering the phone and speaking Chinese really badly. As soon as they start talking and I think, oh, this is a scammer, I'll just say, 你说英文吗? and then they usually slam down the phone, hang up the phone seconds later, because kind of like Daisy, they don't want to waste their time on a foreigner.
Indeed, I've used that technique myself before when somebody said that they had my son as a hostage or something like that. I don't have a son, so I knew it was a scam. But yeah, to protect myself from scammers as a foreigner, of course, I speak Hanlanda Zhongwen, and then of course they'll slam the phone down. Of course, I need to also avoid things on the computer. They're similar to scams, but you gotta avoid those viruses and those nasty Trojans. And of course, you need to watch out for ransomware. So of course, be careful on what you click when you're on the computer. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.